Hi, we're gonna build this Raspberry Pi Pico flexible PCB carrier for the Neotrellis grid. So we've got the Flexi PCB right here. Hey, it's flexible. Wow. We've got a Pi Pico and we've got a USB-C breakout. So that's all we really need to work with. Let's get these guys out and put it together. Okay, so this goes together pretty easy. All you got to do is solder that on there and solder that on there, right? Easy. Well, there's a couple of tricks here. So let's do the breakout first. We're going to use these pins that come with it. For whatever reason, um, with the other breakout, the pin header would be too much, but this is the right size. So we want to just kind of figure out a good way to do this, which is I'm winging it here. So um, the pins help with sort of mechanical connection between the breakout and the flexi. I like to take maybe a breadboard or a little jig or something like that. I probably have one around here somewhere to kind of set those in place to hold it. You could prop it up on something else, but let me see if I've got a little piece of plastic here somewhere. I got a little thing for making a teensy thing for something else here, so let's just kind of prop that up a little bit. And how do I want to do this? Yeah, I'll do it this way. There's no real right or wrong way to do this. I'm just kind of winging it. But you basically just need to get the pins through there, and then you're going to take off the plastic bit and then kind of solder both sides. So it can be a little easier to do this. Well, I don't know. I'm just talking. So let's just solder this thing on there. As always, this is going to be just kind of winging it. Again, I said I've had a coffee, so it's gonna be a interesting video here. But let's just kind of tack one of those in place. Oh, hey, that was fabulous. Totally screwed that up. So I got some solder on there. Here's what's going on. I got some solder in there. I just want to hold this in place so I get those pins straight. Might want to grab with both fingers and just kind of like get it pressed on there. And oh, you know what? Here's a good soldering tip. Hold the thing in place until the solder is done melting instead of taking your hand away and then the part moves. So we got that pretty flat against there. That's great. We can adjust this a little bit more later too. You can straighten this up if you want to. It's not super crucial that it's straight, but let's just do that anyway. So I've got that. It's pretty flat. I hope you can see that. And I'm going to solder the rest of those real quick. We're going to go over this a couple of times to make sure the solder's good. So it's just kind of holding things in place to start with. And we'll do a little better job after we got some solder applied. Okay, so for fun, I'm going to kind of hold the flexi flat here with my left hand and give these guys another quick little reflow. Hopefully that's kind of visible here. Still got a little bit of gold of the PCB showing through, so I'm going to hit it with just a tiny bit more solder on each one that needs it. And it's totally fine. Okay, so that guy's on there from the bottom anyway. It's kind of the pins are attached. So next step is we want to get this little black pin header thing off, or the spacer. So pointy tweezers work good for this. You can sort of get them just underneath the black spacer and kind of pry it up a little bit. Don't want to bend your tweezers though, so sometimes if the spacer is really tight, it can be a bit of a pain. But you can do a little bit of sort of like prying that up. Just don't scratch the PCB. And then sometimes you can pull it right off, or grab some pliers, Leatherman tool, whatever you got handy. And once that's we'll get that so you can see it. Once that's sort of separated a little bit, it's a little easier to sort of get it with a pair of pliers or something. You can kind of get under the edge, or you can just kind of grab it and yank at it. Working like a champ. Maybe not. Give it a little, if you can kind of grab it on both sides and give it a little wiggle, it'll pop off. All right, so we're going to solder the other side of these pins, then we're going to trim them off. What are cutters? We're going to need those. The more I look at this, the more I realize I should do the Pico first, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. Hey, you know what's happening here? So as I try to do this, these little pins are moving around. And one way to fix that so they don't go wiggle wiggle while you're trying to solder the other side is to take that black spacer and stick it sort of just on the top to where it'll hold the pins in place. One of these will not work because it's bent now or in the wrong place. But then if you've got it sort of like that, you can come in from the side and then the pins won't move when you solder them. A little harder to see what's going on. Also, this USB breakout has got 6 pins on it, seven pins, but you really only need 4 of them to make connections. It's just the D plus, D minus, V bus, and ground. But solder them all anyway, just to be on the safe side. All right, that's probably fine. So soldering. Oh, that's really bright, isn't it? Sorry about that. White on white here, doing great. So we've got nice. Let's go this way maybe. We've got some nice soldering, hopefully, on those pins, and we're going to trim those off. We'll do the bottom first. Little pin trimming trick. I hold my other finger over the pin to keep it from shooting up into my face or across the room. It's really good to get a pair of decent flush cutters and to be able to cut these like through-hole pins off that are nice and flush to the board. Make sure you're not too close and you're not scratching or damaging the PCB underneath it when you do this. That's kind of important. Do one at a time. Sometimes it's a little easier to get them nice and flush. Man, the auto exposure is killing me today. Sorry about that. So we got that nice and flush cut on the bottom. Let's do the same thing on the top. Get my little junk out of the way here. And just for fun, we're going to like resolder the top bed here after I cut the pins off. Alright, kind of brush that off, make sure you don't have leftover pins sitting around. You might want to wipe those spare guys away with something. Alright, so we're nice and flat again. Everything's looking good there. But look at your soldering. If you need to, go back over it real quick just to kind of heat up each pad there to make sure it's well connected. Touch more solder sometimes. If you've got it flat like this, it should be nice and flat on the bottom. You could take a multimeter and measure from sort of V-bus to VIN or ground to ground or D plus to these pads on the flexi to double check that the soldering is good. Probably a good idea. Not going to do it here, but that's something you could do. All right, so Pico is gonna just drop on right on top of this, pretty obviously where it goes. If you look at the bottom, there are black marks where you need to solder. You don't need to solder all of the pins. You only really need to solder the ones that are marked there, and these guys here in the middle. Let's kind of tilt that again. So we've got D plus, D minus. These are our sort of tricky ones to do. and then we've got these SDA, SEL, and then some grounds and voltage. So what can be helpful is getting a piece of tape and holding that in place. Or you could use some pins if you've got some extra pin headers sticking around. You could use some pins to sort of like hold it in place like that. And we're not going to use pins to solder the edges. We're going to do these little castellated pads on the outside edge of the Pico. So we're just going to solder those guys. I'm going to just do this without tape and see what happens here. So if you use some pins to sort of like get that in place, I want to solder this bottom corner first, or maybe flip it around and do the less exposed side here a little better. Just make sure you're lined up properly. And the way to go with these castellated pads is you want to sort of get your iron tip on the bottom and then sort of lean it up into the notch. This is where some tape can be helpful, but I'm going to just hold it with my finger. I think we'll find out. We'll see if this works. No rehearsal. We're just doing it live to tape here. So I'm pressing down with that hand, kind of hold it in place, and kind of got my iron in there. I'm just going to get this one in place. So we filled in the solder in that little outside castellated pad right there. So in theory, that's kind of tacked in place. I'm going to double check which of my pins. So that guy, some down here, but we'll double check those in a minute. If I look at this, I'm not exactly 100% lined up on my my pads there, so I may readjust this. Let's actually do it from this side. Does this work better? Maybe. I don't know. Is there a better way to do this? There's probably a better way to do this. But that's the thing. You want to get one sort of pad in position, and you can sort of like play with where it's at without. Don't grab it too soon. That's a little better. So what I'm doing is looking at the way these pin holes line up through the board to the circles on the bottom, just see if it looks nice and straight. So I think it's pretty good. So now that I'm looking at this, it's maybe not obvious that you got to look at the bottom to do this, but I'm going to do the first third and then a couple down here and a 3 from the end. So let me do the third from the end down here first. I suppose there could be a better way to mark these, but yeah, that's a little blobby in there. Let's hit it again. Since everything's flat on my work surface here, you should just be able to like press down on the Pico, kind of hold it in place. It should be cool. You can sort of check your work here just by like going along the edge and seeing if that guy's nice and snug. It's nice and flat, so that's good. We're gonna do this one. Oh, the other here's I'm not paying attention enough. The grounds are what you want to solder on both sides here. The ground pins have a square inside edge. All the other ones have a rounded one. So just go and look at the board and do, oh, this one's got a little square edge, so I'm going to do that one. That's my indicator of where I want to solder, because I just want to get the grounds connected, and that'll kind of help the board, the flexi stay connected to the Pico. And see what I'm doing there? I'm just trying to like get the tip in, give it a little lean, let the solder connect. Let's do the other side, and then we'll do those I2C connections. So here's a good example. That one did not connect to the. You got some solder on the castellated edge, but it didn't connect to the flexi on the bottom. So you want to kind of lean a little bit, get that reheated, maybe a touch more solder to let it flow, and there we go. All right, where's my other ground? This edge might be a little trickier. If need be, you could sort of get it up on edge and sort of come at it a little like this. Here's where the gloves come in handy, kids. Try not to burn your fingers. Uh, also in a pinch, you could let that solder flow into the hole and it'll kind of go down and through. These grounds are just sort of bonus connections. They're not super electrically important. That one or that one over there, much more important than these other ones. They're just sort of holding the flexi in place. Probably a good idea to have them connected, but not super crucial. Don't worry about that guy over there. I don't think there's a pad. Oh, there is a pad, but it doesn't connect through. So that one in the end, not so important. So you can look at these again, like go reheat the pad, let that solder flow a little bit. I don't know, this is looking pretty sloppy. But all right, so we've got those two. We've got that one. Got those two. And we got to get these guys, the SDA, SCL. So that's our I2C, which connects over here. So those are these two next to our ground over here. And I'm just going to get confusing by flipping around. So you've got ground, ground, and then it's going to be these next two. Got a lot of solder on that one. Kind of filled in. It's good. All right. So there you can kind of see they filled into the holes. I don't know if you can see it that close or not, but that's kind of the connection. Now I realize I've done maybe a questionable job of protecting the PCB underneath there. I might go back and show you on another board. You could tape around some of these connections on the back of the Pico to be safe, just that it doesn't short out or something. I probably should have done that ahead of time. I think it's probably not needed, but this is maybe the tricky part. You need to get this pad that's underneath on the Pico to connect to the pad on the flexi here. So my solution to this is you want to get your iron sideways and touch both of those things at the same time, and then let some solder flow, and then kind of drag it away. Now in this case, I don't know if that shows, but I've got sort of a blob, and it doesn't look like they're connected. So I want to sort of get in there again, and maybe with the back of my tweezers, press down a little bit, and then kind of get the solder wet, and then sort of move your soldering iron across. You can get it to sort of bridge across the two. Let me do that one more time. We're going to check our connections here in a minute. But so I've got a nice little bump there. It looks like it's connected. Is this showing? Man, the exposure is terrible. I'm sorry. So I think that's looking pretty good. So let's do the other one. Same thing. Get the iron kind of across both pads. Put some solder in there. Give it a little wiggle back and forth. It's sort of blobbed up. And then if you kind of drag it across, it'll connect. And once it's there, let's see, I got like some little sticking up parts there, so let's try that one more time. Now I'm hitting both pads at the same time with my iron here, which is probably fine. Just don't go crazy leaning your iron onto the flexi for like more than a couple of seconds. You don't want to like burn through it or cause any damage. So I think I am looking pretty good here. If we can get that up there closer. That's the only really tricky part, is getting those pads connected. So I think it's good, but we're going to double check that with the multimeter and see how things are. So let's get a meter. Let's get it on the continuity. Continuity is the little beeper guy here on this fluke. It goes, hang on, can I make it do the thing? The microphone's way over there. Anyway, it'll beep when you connect these together. So you want to look at, on the bottom of the flexi here, there's D minus and there's D minus. So that far one, let's get this centered up here. So the far one and this pin should have continuity. Check the D plus to make sure it's not connect. So those two aren't connected. D minus is D minus. D plus is D plus. Great. You could also check those against any of the other pins to make sure it's not grounded out on something. It seems like it's good. Let's double check D minus here. It's ground. We can check our grounds to ground over here. That's working. V bus is this one? No, hold on. Let's flip it over. V bus is this top one, so we can check that. So that's V bus and VIN. So that should connect. We get a beep, and we're good. So ground. Where's our ground? Ground. 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 Okay, these two are SDA and SCL. And, ooh, I'm not showing connection there. That's my SCL. But SDA is not beeping, so I'm going to give that another little hit of solder. We'll check it again. Unless I hit the wrong pins, which I could have done. SCL. Let's look at the bottom. SDA is going to be if you check from the bottom, you're pretty much just measuring across the PCB. So you want to kind of check from the pins on the Pico to make sure it's connected. Another sort of like little debuggy kind of trick here is with these castellated pads, if you come at it sideways, like get your iron parallel to the edge here, and you can kind of come in there and reflow that joint. Oh, you know what? It looks like I have some. Double check that these aren't bridged too, so that's probably a good idea. Check. No. So CL and SDA seems unhappy. Why is this? Oh, you know why I've done incorrectly? That's not the right pin. That's the right pin. That's the one I want. That one's a ground. Duh. So, ground. That one's connected. But this guy right here is the one that needs some extra solder. Solder the right pins, kids. Alright, now I got loads of solder on there. Probably too much. If you got a little too much solder, you could I just sort of heat it up, drag the solder iron away. Sometimes it'll just pull it away a little bit. So, SCL, SDA, beep. Okay, hooray, that's good. So, 3 connections there. One of those I didn't actually need to do. Let's get some tweezers here to point with. So, we've got this guy erroneously soldered. These 2 are the ones we want, marked in black. Probably should be a better way to mark those, but that's going to do. So we've got an assembled Flexi PCB here. So some things you probably want to do, you can use electrical tape, or you can use Captain tape, whatever you got. I have this Captain tape. And tape over these pins on the bottom. You could clean this up a little bit if you want to get rid of the solder flux, but it doesn't really matter. The fun part of this Captain tape is finding the edge. I usually use my tweezers here to sort of get it going. This is exciting stuff. Trying to undo the tape. And of course, it tears. And then you gotta, it's that tape problem. So let's cut off a piece of this. And from here, I gotta eyeball this. I'm never quite getting it right. This isn't super crucial, but good idea just to make sure it's not contacting anything. So tape over the pins. there, and then tape over the D plus D minus, just so it does not touch anything on the main board. You put some tape on the main board as well, probably a good idea, but it doesn't hurt to sort of go crazy here. So taped over sort of the main contact points, a little tape sticking out right there, a little tape sticking out there. I'm going to trim that off. Don't have to worry about it. It's just kind of stick out. So that's it. That's the whole deal. Now, not covered in this video is attaching this to the Neotrellis board. I don't have one handy to look at. Or maybe I do. Nah, I don't think I do. But you're going to do that same sort of trick you used for these pads when you attach these guys. So you, in that case, you probably do want to tape it in place, and then you're going to like get it lined up. You want to line up the screw holes if you can to your case if you already have that. But if you don't, just try to make sure it's lined up on this. There's a capacitor on the board right there where that hole goes, and kind of line it up. Make sure it's not too crooked one way or the other, because you don't want to have to sort of wiggle the. You don't want the USB jack to get kind of too sideways, because this is kind of all one piece. It will move around a little bit, and that's fine. That's kind of why it's flexible PCB. But that's that. Cool? I hope so. Enjoy the rest of putting that into the Neotrellis. Cheers.